After turning her back to us and laughing strangely twice, her figure disappeared into the darkness in the blink of an eye. I was so scared that I held my breath, not daring to move. I raised my hand and nudged Ligia. He clearly saw it too, his face was even more shocked than mine. I could feel Ligia's change, it was fear. Extreme fear. His hand that was holding my hand was trembling and covered in sweat. In this situation, I almost didn't have the courage to lift my feet anymore. Although scared, Ligia still had his mind. He wanted to confirm whether it was really Chu Phi Nhien's ghost, so he hurriedly ran upstairs. I had no choice but to follow closely. We searched every room upstairs, but didn't see anyone. Not even a single ghost. Not long after, my phone ran out of battery. We only had Ligia's phone as the only source of light, and the light was also fading. After a long while of tension, the beer I drank during dinner had turned into urine, urging my bladder. Unable to bear it any longer, I pulled Ligia to go to the bathroom with me. After finishing, Ligia conveniently helped me. I held his phone and waited outside the door. Immediately after, there was the sound of water running from the sink, followed by a loud crash. The sound of broken objects was drowned out by Ligia's loud curses. Ligia was usually calm, I had never seen him curse like that. I quickly asked what happened and turned on the light for him. I saw him sitting against the wall opposite the sink, his face full of confusion. The cosmetics I had left on the shelf were scattered around him. He stared at the mirror above the sink, full of fear. He said that he had just seen a ghostly face in the mirror, the light was dim blue. A face covered in blood. This time, Ligia was clearly really scared. When I helped him stand up, his legs were still shaking. I boldly shined the light on the mirror, but saw nothing. But I could imagine the fear when the face was so close. Back in the bedroom, it took us a long time to calm down. We were sure that this place was really haunted. And that ghost was Chu Phi Nhien. Because Ligia said that the clothes she was wearing were the ones she was wearing when she fell off the cliff. In more than 20 years of my life, this was the first time I had seen a ghost. I had never been so scared. Speaking of Chu Phi Nhien, I felt angry again. She lied to me, then accidentally fell off the cliff. Why did she come to us? Speaking of this, I couldn't help but cry out in anger. We just got married, you're only 30, getting a new wife isn't too much. Does she want you to stay a widow forever? Under the dim light of the phone, Ligia lowered his head. All of this was because of him. He took out a cigarette to smoke, was silent for a moment, then said regretfully, "There's something I haven't told the police." I was surprised. "What's the matter?" He took a drag of his cigarette, as if the smoke would give him the courage to continue speaking. This was the first time I saw him so depressed. He leaned against the bed and sighed. At that time, I caught her when she fell, but we both almost fell off the cliff. I had no way to pull her up. If I hadn't let go, I would have fallen too. Hearing that, I felt heartbroken. "So you let go?" He nodded, pulling his hair with a regretful look. Maybe if I had tried a little harder, I could have saved her. When I let go, I regretted it. Maybe she resents me. He sighed as if relieved of a burden. It was no surprise that Chu Phi Nhien resented her. Everything seemed clear. "So you're afraid that Chu Phi Nhien will come back and build an octagonal well to imprison her soul?" He looked at me in surprise, then calmed down. "I didn't expect you to pay attention to the well." "You're right, it's not that I don't believe in the supernatural, it's that I do. That's why I'm afraid." I felt a little sorry. "Last time you came back to check if the well was still effective?" He smiled sadly. "Yes, that well was sealed well. Now that she's here, that means the well is no longer effective. That also proves that the last time I went back to Shirley Village, I really saw Chu Phi Nhien in you, and it wasn't an illusion." "Seeing Chu Phi ran in you?" I asked in surprise. He recounted the incident. I was stunned. Before I could come to my senses, another strange voice rang out from the living room. Ligia stubbed out his cigarette, his voice trembling. When she was alive, she liked to hum this song while arranging flowers at home. Let's go see. I must say he was really brave. I was surprised that I could still follow him. When we reached the second-floor hallway, we used the light from our phones to shine into the living room. Under the dim light, Chu Phi Nhien sat on the living room floor, her head tilted and her posture strange. She was wearing a torn dress, her hair was messy, and her body was covered in blood. She was placing white roses one by one into a vase on the coffee table. Realizing that we were watching, she stopped singing and paused. She suddenly turned her head, revealing a bloodshot eye through her long hair. Then she stared at us. Leisha and I held our breaths, standing still. That moment felt like a lifetime. Leisha in front of me suddenly rushed downstairs to welcome Chu Phi Nhien. I was stunned. What was he going to do? I hurriedly ran after him to enlighten him. As soon as we reached the stairs, he was suddenly pushed hard and rolled down the stairs. As he lay on the ground, he held his bruised and bleeding head, looking at me with an incredulous expression, who was still standing at the top of the stairs. I let out a strange smile, as if I had become a completely different person. He looked back into the living room. At this moment, Chu Phi Nhien had disappeared, leaving only the vase on the table. It's a pity you didn't fall to your death. I slowly walked down the stairs, the light from my phone shining directly on Leisha's face. He wanted to stand up and run away, but he hadn't recovered his strength and couldn't move at the moment. Although I was smiling under the light, my eyes were cold and cruel. His pupils contracted, and he hesitantly called my name, Lin Shu? I bent down, squeezing his chin tightly, forcing him to look at me. Look closely, I'm Chu Phi Nhien. I said with a fierce expression, as if I wanted to eat him alive. It's Chu Phi Nhien, the person you betrayed and killed. Leisha's facial muscles twitched unnaturally, and he tried to pull my hand away. It's really you. What do you want? I laughed wickedly. Haha, you're finally afraid. Leisha struggled to stand up, but I pushed his shoulder down. You really don't know right from wrong, it's obvious you betrayed me. Suddenly, I pulled out a fruit knife from behind and held it straight to his neck. The sharp blade lightly cut into his skin, causing him to tremble. He didn't expect me to act like that, so he hugged my neck and didn't dare to move. Why did I fall off the cliff? It was you who pushed me on purpose. I shouted, my voice frantic. Do you know that I didn't die immediately when I fell, but was torn apart by a wild beast? I grabbed my hair, screaming in anger. Why? Why did you hurt me? Tell me. How could you do that after so many years together? Feeling the blade pressed into his neck, Leisha tensed up, taking a deep breath. Sit down here, I'll tell you everything. I sat down, but still held the knife in my hand. Yeah, it's true that I had no other choice. Leisha changed his tone, his voice becoming gentle. Chu Phi Nhien, even if you turn into a ghost, I'm not afraid of you. Really? If you were really a ghost and wanted to kill me, you wouldn't have entered Lin Shu and would have come by yourself. He guessed almost right. So what? So what? Suddenly, he endured the pain from the knife wound, snatched the knife from my hand and pushed me to the ground. I was pressed down, my fragile body unable to resist. He put the knife to my neck and took out a yellow talisman from his pocket, pressing it against my forehead. I looked surprised. So you prepared the talisman beforehand, I didn't expect you to dare to confront me. His eyes were filled with madness. When fighting a ghost, you have to be ready for everything. I laughed coldly, not taking it seriously. Right now, this body is your new wife. Do you dare to kill someone? If she wasn't as strong as me, are you sure she would survive if you killed her? Leisha snorted coldly. This is an exorcism charm. If you hadn't possessed Lin Shu, I would have easily chased you away. You're in Lin Shu's body now. When we find an exorcist, you'll be turned into ashes. Hearing that, I stared at him, full of anger. You're so cruel. He chuckled. Now it's my turn. Don't you want to know why I killed you? You're a ghost anyway, so it's fine to tell you. I owe a lot of gambling debts and can't pay them back. Those people are cannibals who don't spit out their bones. I know you bought expensive life insurance, so I have no choice but to sacrifice you. Seeing my face red with anger, he seemed amused. Angry? Be even angrier. Do you know why I said you were pregnant with a bastard's child? He looked at me with satisfaction. Why? He curled his lips proudly. Those people are not easy to provoke. If I can't pay, they will make me pay in another way. They know my wife is beautiful, you know. I put sleeping pills in your milk every time they come over. Lija. I will kill you. I screamed, angry and trembling. I have done nothing wrong to you. Why did you do this to me? I shouted. His eyes were cold, his voice was also cold. Because I love myself more than you. Everyone is selfish. I laughed fiercely. I don't intend to kill you, because the fun isn't over yet. Lija frowned. What do you mean? I leaned close to his ear, enough for him to hear clearly. It seems like your charm didn't work. Lija was stunned. As soon as I finished speaking, I collapsed to the ground. When I opened my eyes again, I was myself again. Lin Chu? Seeing that I had returned to normal, Lija hesitantly called my name. I nodded. It's me. His eyes seemed a little dangerous. Do you remember what just happened? I remembered everything clearly. Seeing me silent, he understood that I knew everything. He took a deep breath, put the knife away, bag. Lin Chu, we are husband and wife. Will you keep this a secret? There was a threatening intent in his eyes. At this point, I had no choice but to cooperate. Lija, don't do anything stupid. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. You are my husband after all. Lija nodded in satisfaction, but then said something that sent a chill down my spine. Lin Chu, only the dead can keep a secret. Are you trying to kill me? I shouted angrily. You're crazy. When Lija was caught off guard, I secretly took my phone from my pocket and pressed the emergency call button for my cousin, Ha Khan. Lin Chu, I have to apologize to you. His voice sounded apologetic, but in reality it was cold and indifferent. I struggled to escape, but he grabbed my hair, dragged me into the living room, forced me to sit on the sofa, one hand holding my neck, the other hand squeezing my hand. Tell me the passwords of all the bank cards, and I will give you an easier death. He was very strong, and I tried my best just to stall for time. Luckily, he only squeezed my neck lightly, allowing me to still be able to talk normally. Lija, you liar. Killing Zhou Firen is not enough, now you want to kill me too. He did not show any anger when he heard me cursing, but only spoke coldly. I don't want to do that. After all, you are rich, I just want to take advantage of you a little. But now you know too much, so my life is more important than money. He is truly a selfish and crazy person. This is China, not Thailand. Do you think you can get away with this crime? He looked at me with cold eyes. You will die of depression-induced suicide, it has nothing to do with me. Even if I am discovered, as long as I have enough money, I can still find a way to escape. Hearing these words, I became even angrier. Depression-induced suicide, you are such a bastard, I shouted. If that's the case, you won't get a penny from me anyway. Then you don't need to be so long-winded with me. He opened the desk drawer, took out the sleeping pills I usually take for anxiety and insomnia, and forced me to swallow almost the entire bottle. I tried to resist, but couldn't avoid swallowing a large amount of the pills. When he saw me gradually becoming hazy, he stood up, thinking he had succeeded. Just as my consciousness became hazy, I heard Lija receive a call nearby. He didn't avoid me because he thought I was fast asleep. I gritted my teeth, trying to stay awake, to listen to the conversation. A young male voice rang out. I will meet you, delete the original video, and all the backups, but the price will be 1 million. Lija cursed angrily. The other voice calmly replied. Anyway, once the video is deleted, everything will be perfect for you. Then this 1 million is nothing. Li Jia thought for a moment and agreed, okay, but you have to keep your word. He said coldly. I will choose the time and place to meet. Sleepiness swallowed me, and I could no longer hear anything. When I woke up, I was in the hospital, feeling like I had just survived a terrible nightmare. Fortunately, I was still alive. Xiaoqing sat by my bed, recounting that Li Jia tried to drown me in the bathtub and cut my wrist artery. I lost a lot of blood and almost went into shock. Fortunately, I was saved in time. At that time, Li Jia had already left the villa. The police found him in the emergency room of a nearby hospital. In this way, Li Jia was arrested. At the police station, in the interrogation room, I don't know what happened. I just went gambling. Because I didn't think she could be saved, I went to treat her wound. The old policeman beside me took a sip of water and slowly said. Li Jia, although you have erased all traces. But Lin Shu has woken up. Hearing this, his hands clenched. He had lost the bet. Seeing his reaction, the old policeman nodded in satisfaction, then continued. She has provided complete surveillance video and recordings, everything is clear. As soon as he heard surveillance and recordings, Li Jia's blood froze. She said that because there were many strange phenomena happening in the house, she installed hidden cameras and recording devices, including in the bathroom. In the end, no ghosts were caught, but your crimes were exposed. Now that we have witnesses and physical evidence, as long as you confess, you will be given leniency, otherwise you will be severely punished. Li Jia was forced into a corner, gritting his teeth and admitting. Yes, I cut Lin Shu's wrist. But what do you mean by saying that no supernatural events happened? Both Lin Shu and I saw Zhou Fei Ran's ghost, and she even possessed Lin Shu. The young policeman shook his head. From beginning to end, there were no ghosts. Lin Shu suspected that you killed Zhou Feiren, and she pretended to be a ghost to force you to admit it. The ghost you saw was actually an actor she hired. She originally just wanted to find out the truth, she didn't expect you to go to the extent of trying to kill her to shut her up. She's really lucky to be alive. Hearing this, Li Jia's face darkened. He asked for a cigarette, and sat silently for a while. After finishing the cigarette, he muttered with a crazy look in his eyes. Impossible. I'm never wrong. It's Zhou Feiren, she possessed Lin Shu, it was all her scheme. The old policeman interrupted him. Enough. We handle cases based on objective facts, not ghosts. If that's the case, then tell me about Zhou Feiren's death. Li Jia looked up, as if he had just remembered something important. Zhou Feiren's fall from the cliff was an accident, it has nothing to do with me. He smiled calmly. Just based on those words, you can't prove that I killed her. Without direct evidence, he was still trying to gamble. Even if Lin Shu didn't die, if you want to convict me of murder, I won't have to go to jail. If I behave well, I might even get a reduced sentence, right? Once he confessed, the death penalty would be the end that awaited him. As long as he insisted that Zhou Feiren's death was an accident, he still had a chance to live. The young policeman was surprised. He never expected that, since entering the police force, he would meet such an arrogant criminal as Li Jia. The old policeman raised his eyebrows and said leisurely, Lin Shu said that you were blackmailed many times. Li Jia was stunned, his eyes filled with fear. Based on the recording she provided, we have identified the person who blackmailed you. The old policeman looked at him like an old cat that had set a trap. Do you want to know what we found on him? Li Jia's psychological defenses completely collapsed. His whole body went limp, leaning back in his chair in despair. The light of the interrogation room enveloped him, making him look like a trapped animal that had lost all resistance. The young policeman was both angry and grateful. If the drone hadn't accidentally filmed you pushing Zhou Feiren off the cliff, we really couldn't do anything to you. The old policeman nodded in agreement. The evidence was too clear, and Li Jia had no way to deny it. Based on his confession, the police arrested Zhao Hai, Wang Cheng, and Sun Xiaoguang, who took turns raping Zhou Feiren. These three opened casinos, were involved in gangs, and committed countless crimes. Because the details were clear, the evidence was sufficient, and completely reliable, the case was quickly prosecuted. After the court sentenced Li Jie to death, he was transferred from the detention center to prison. I did not go to see him until just before the execution. Before the execution, I submitted a request to meet him as his wife. We faced each other through the glass, silent for a long time. Finally, I spoke first. "I'm glad I'm alive to see you again. To be honest, the camellias on the cliff aren't pretty at all." He gritted his teeth, saying 3 words through his teeth, "Chu Phi Nhien. I knew it was you. You've been playing with me from start to finish." I looked at him with a teasing gaze. "What are you talking about?" "I'm your new wife, Lin Shu." He didn't pay attention to my sarcasm. "If you came here just to laugh at me, I won't forgive you." He stood up and was about to leave. "Don't you want to know how your mother is?" As expected, upon hearing the mention of his mother, he sat down again. Even the most cruel person has weaknesses. This is human nature. Although Li Jie was cruel and selfish, he was very filial. His weakness was his mother. He was an illegitimate child, his father abandoned him and his mother. His mother was the one who raised and supported him until today. In this world, besides himself, the person he cared about the most was his mother. He squinted at me, his eyes like a venomous snake. "What happened to my mother?" "She died. I told her you were sentenced to death. She was so shocked that a blood clot traveled to her brain, and she couldn't be saved." I lied to him. When he learned that Li Jie was sentenced to death, his mother was indeed hospitalized for a heart attack, but 3 days ago, she was discharged. However, what awaited her was also a prison sentence. Hearing that, Li Jie was seething with anger, wanting to smash the glass, but was handcuffed, unable to do anything. "So it turns out you really made my mother so angry." As soon as we reached the stairs, under the dim light of the flashlight, we saw a woman coming out of the bedroom. She tilted her head, her joints making cracking sounds, like in horror movies. Her long, messy hair covered her face, making it impossible for us to see her clearly, and she did not turn to look at us. Seeing him in that state, a sense of comfort rose in my heart. He looked at me, his eyes filled with hatred. "I really regret it. I should have killed you right then." I smiled lightly, like a victor. "It's a pity, you don't have that choice. Oh, by the way, I've arranged the octagonal well for your mother. That will be her resting place." He was stunned, he could only sit helplessly on the chair, roaring like a caged animal. Chu Phi ran. "I'll kill you." "All right, the farewell is over." I adjusted my clothes and stood up. "Today is really a good day." Seeing him lose control, the warden quickly intervened, taking him away with a scream. Outside the prison, Ha Tan stood under the shade of a tree, holding a bouquet of white roses. Seeing me walk out, he walked over and handed me the bouquet. "Congratulations, you have achieved what you wished for." I smiled, taking the bouquet. "This is called, evil begets evil." "Thank you for everything, my good cousin." I looked at him and smiled meaningfully. In fact, Ha Tan was not my cousin at all. And I was not really Lamb Thursday. Just as Triet said, I was Chu Phi Nhien. After being pushed down the cliff, I was reborn in another body. If I hadn't been lucky enough to be reincarnated and imprisoned in the octagonal well, it's hard to imagine what kind of demon I would have become. After planning my revenge, I went to Xiaqing. I had saved him in my college days, and he had said that if I needed him, I could come to him. At that time, he was on his way to my funeral. So I wore gold and silver, becoming his rich cousin. Li Jie was right, I had played him from start to finish. The information he received was all arranged by me through Xiaqing. That villa was equipped with a hidden smart system and signal jamming devices. The entire villa was under my control. Every night when he slept, Li Jie was hypnotized by the smart home. The ghostly images he saw were partly from hallucinations during hypnosis, and partly from the actors I hired to pretend to be ghosts, appearing through secret passages. I did everything to confuse him. I knew it would be difficult to bring him to justice without direct evidence that he pushed me. So I forced him to kill me again. If everything went well, he would be convicted of attempted murder, at least for decades in prison. I didn't expect that even God would help me. Someone accidentally filmed him pushing me off the cliff. In the end, he ruined his own life. Under the judgment of God, all sins must be punished.